Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Well, this is episode number 4, by the way.
4 already, huh? Time flies.
And today we're going somewhere kind of unexpected.
Yeah.
Like, where does bread fit into business?
Yeah, not your usual topic. But that's what makes this fun, right?
Exactly. So our source material is this blog post by Tony Feghali.
Tony Feghali. Okay, I know the name. Business coach guy, yeah.
Yep, that's him. But in this post, he's not giving, like, direct business advice. It's more like he's reflecting on how baking bread, specifically sourdough, gave him insights into mentorship.
Interesting. I mean, at first glance, you wouldn't think those two have much in common.
Right. But Tony found these amazing parallels. And he even goes so far as to compare mentorship to a good Scotch whiskey.
Okay, now that's an analogy I gotta hear. So the location, the ingredients, it all matters.
Exactly. He's all about the nuances, the little details that make a big difference.
I respect that. It's all about the details, right?
Absolutely. And the first thing Tony talks about is readiness, that starting point, both in baking and mentoring.
Okay, so where does the bread come in with this?
He uses the sourdough starter as an analogy, that mix of flour and water that, like, creates the yeast and makes the bread rise.
The starter. Gotcha. It's got to be active and bubbly, right?
Exactly. And Tony emphasizes that a good starter takes time to develop. You can't rush it.
So you're saying there's a human connection here, right? Like with a mentor and mentee, they got to be ready for the process.
Exactly. You can't just throw people together and expect, like, instant results. Patience and preparation are key.
Makes total sense. Like trying to learn guitar overnight ain't gonna happen.
Exactly. It's about creating the right conditions for growth on both sides. So this leads me to a question for our listeners. Think about a time you entered a mentorship situation, either as the mentor or the mentee, and it just, like, didn't quite work out. Was there a lack of readiness on either side? What could have been done differently? Just something to think about.
Yeah, definitely worth reflecting on.
Okay, so moving on. Tony talks about the ingredients, and this is where his blog gets really vivid. He talks about using local flour, specific types of honey, even the rosemary he uses has a whole story behind it.
Wow, that's commitment to quality. But I gotta ask, how does that translate to mentorship?
Well, if we think of a mentorship like a recipe, what would be those essential ingredients? What makes it successful?
Good question. Well, I'd say trust is a big one. From both sides, gotta have that.
Definitely. You can't build a solid foundation without it.
And then empathy too, right? A mentor needs to like understand and relate to the mentee's challenges, aspirations, all that.
Absolutely. And I think flexibility is important too, on both sides, because life, rarely goes according to plan.
Yeah, flexibility is key. Got to be able to adapt.
Tony stresses that a lot, which I love. It reminds me of that saying, the map is not the territory.
Love that quote. You got to be ready to adjust course as you go.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about the process. Anyone who's baked bread, especially sourdough, knows it's not a quick thing. It takes time, patience, you got to follow the steps.
So it's kind of like building a strong mentor-mentee relationship. Takes time and effort, right?
Exactly. It's like you can't rush the dough rising. You have to respect the natural rhythm of the process.
And in a mentorship, you're nurturing that connection, building trust, understanding that, growth takes time. It's not overnight.
Right. And Tony actually makes a funny comment here about the bread making process. He's like, if you mess it up, you might end up with the dogs.
Haha, I can relate to that.
But he quickly adds, it depends on the dogs. Some might enjoy your less than perfect loaf.
Exactly. There's always someone who appreciates it.
Exactly. But I think the underlying message is, both baking and mentoring need structure. A framework to follow.
Right. There's a process, a recipe, you might say.
Exactly. But knowing when to deviate from that structure is equally important.
Ah, I see what you mean. Like, an experienced baker might adjust the proving time based on the humidity, right?
Yep. And a skilled mentor knows when to adapt their approach based on, what the mentee needs at that moment.
That's a good point. It's that ability to read the situation and make adjustments, be flexible.
Exactly. And speaking of adapting, Tony takes us on a pretty deep metaphorical journey when he compares the oven to the challenges and growth a mentee faces.
Oh, wow. Okay, so the oven's like a symbol for transformation, right?
Exactly. He's saying that just like bread goes through a change under the heat and pressure of the oven, a mentee also grows and develops when they face challenges.
That's a powerful image. Makes you think about the heat and pressure we all go through.
Right. And he describes the mentee becoming crunchy on the outside, like they develop resilience.
Right, they can handle the heat, But they also stay soft on the inside, right? They keep their empathy and understanding.
Exactly. It's a beautiful balance. And the mentor's role.
Hmm?
Tony describes them as the wingman, that supportive presence who helps the mentee navigate those tough baking times.
I love that analogy. The mentor is there to offer guidance, encouragement, a safe space to process all those challenges.
Exactly.
Mm.
They don't shield them from the heat, but they stand beside them,
Mhm.
offering support.
It's all about empowering them to face those challenges head on, come out stronger on the other side.
Exactly. And just when I thought we'd covered everything, Tony throws in this curveball about naming sourdough starters.
Wait, what? Naming them, like giving them a personality.
He actually refuses to name his until it survives a year. He's serious about it.
A year. Wow. So he's like not getting attached until it's proven itself.
Right. And I think that ties back to his whole idea of commitment, especially in mentorship. It's a long-term thing.
Yeah, it's not about those fleeting interactions. It's about investing in someone's growth, being there for the long haul.
Exactly. And that brings us to a question for our listeners. How much are you willing to invest in your own growth or in mentoring someone else? Are you in it for the quick fix, or are you committed to that long-term journey? Something to think about.
For sure. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new project, a new relationship, but true growth, whether it's a sourdough starter or a mentorship, takes work, sustained effort, a willingness to weather the storms.
Exactly. And I think that's a perfect place to
To pause and let our listeners ponder that. Good one. It makes you think about all those mentors who've had a real impact on you, right?
absolutely. Those who, weren't just there for a quick pep talk.
Right. They were invested in your growth over time, saw you through different stages.
It's about building that legacy, sharing knowledge and experience.
Exactly. And that ties into another cool point Tony makes about the journey itself. Both in bread making and bee mentoring, the best ones are filled with curiosity.
Right. That desire to learn, to grow,
Yeah.
and to embrace those unexpected twists and turns.
He even talks about how sometimes the greatest lessons come from the mistakes we make along the way.
Oh, for sure. Whether it's like a loaf that didn't rise properly or a mentorship that, didn't go as planned.
Exactly. Those setbacks, if we look at them right, they become valuable.
It's all about mindset,
Yeah.
right? Not seeing them as failures, but as chances to grow, to
Yeah.
course correct.
Love that. Like that quote, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work.
Exactly. That spirit of experimentation, that resilience, that's what Tony's talking about.
He wants us to see the whole thing as a journey of discovery. Be open to those lessons, even the ones that surprise us.
And it's not just about our journey, right? Both bread making and mentorship, they have this ripple effect.
Oh, totally. A good mentor can inspire their mentee to then mentor others.
It's like paying it forward. That knowledge, those skills shared, they have a lasting impact.
Way beyond that initial relationship, for sure.
And this leads to Tony's closing reflection, which really hit home for me. He talks about how both bread baking and mentorship leave a legacy.
It's not just about the bread itself or the advice you give. It's the impact,
Right. The ripple effect you create, the way you touch other people's lives.
He even says, and this is powerful, that both bread and mentorship nourish others. Literally, and figuratively.
Wow, that's deep. And that nourishment, it lasts, even after the bread is eaten or the mentorship is officially over.
It sticks with you.
So as we wrap up this exploration, those unexpected links between bread and mentorship, we want to leave our listeners with this thought. What kind of legacy are you building?
What are you baking into the world, so to speak?
Are you sharing your knowledge, your experiences in a way that nourishes others? Are you investing in relationships that can create positive change? Big questions, but worth thinking about.
For sure. Because it's not just about us, it's about the impact we have.
And that's what makes it so meaningful.
Absolutely.
So folks, there you have it. From flour to trust, from oven heat to personal challenges. We've gone deep into these parallels thanks to Tony Feghali.
Great insights from him. Got to give him credit.
Hope you enjoyed this dive as much as we did.
Always a pleasure exploring these ideas.
And remember, even if you never bake sourdough yourself,
the lessons we've talked about today, they apply to so much more.
Readiness, ingredients, process, adaptability, that long-term commitment, the legacy we build.
These are things we can all use in our lives.
So, take a moment, reflect on your own journey. What ingredients are you bringing to the table? What challenges are you facing? And how are you handling that heat?
And most importantly, what kind of legacy are you working towards?
Because ultimately, it's not just about the bread we bake or the advice we give, it's about the impact we make on the world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. It's amazing, right? Like, we started with bread, and now we're talking about legacy and impact.
It's those unexpected connections that really get you thinking.
Exactly. And I think what Tony's saying is, even if you never bake a loaf of sourdough,
The lessons still apply.
yeah, those core principles,
Mm.
readiness, ingredients, process, adaptability, commitment, legacy.
They're universal, you know?
Yeah.
They can apply to, well, pretty much anything we do in life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want our listeners to really take this to heart.
Yeah, think about your own journey.
Exactly. What ingredients are you bringing to the table, to your relationships, to your work?
What challenges are you facing right now? Those baking moments.
And how are you navigating them? What's your approach?
And maybe the biggest question of all, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
It's a lot to think about, but it's worth it.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about the bread or the advice or the skills.
It's about the impact we make on the world around us.
Well said.
And on that note, folks, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a real pleasure exploring these ideas with you all.
Until next time.